Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report here from the 56th Annual World Dairy Expo. Excited to be broadcasting here. Dan Basse, Katie Burgess, as well as Ben Laine joining us this weekend. Ben, I'll start with you because, when you look at the milk markets, it has definitely been a sore spot in the ag industry this year. We look at how many times DMC payments have been triggered every single month. Is there light at the end of the tunnel? Do you think we are going to see some more momentum in these milk markets?
I think we've certainly come off the worst of it. It was a really tough year. I think we expected a little bit of weakness compared to how good last year had been, but we didn't quite expect it to fall to the depths that it did. Luckily, I think that was pretty short-lived, and we're going to see a little more shakiness still, but I think we're off the worst of it. And as we move into next year, I think beef price levels still aren't quite great, but if we can see feed costs and some of the other costs come down, that'll help margins and help profitability. So it'll feel a little better. Even if we don't see milk prices get back to where some of the highs that we had seen, it's going to feel a lot better than it does right now and than it has this year.
Well, Taylor Leach from our dairy team, she said, Todd, I keep hearing from producers this week that they just talk about these hidden costs, all these costs that are coming up, and that's really eating away at margins. So when you look at the forecast for milk prices, Katie, as we head into 2024, what is your thoughts?
As we're looking to 2024, I think we're going to see a divergence between Class 4 and Class 3 prices. Right now, for folks that live in areas where they make a lot of butter and powder, those prices are looking quite a bit better for folks that are primarily paid on cheese. And you're right, there are costs that people are looking at, general inflation, paying more for labor, interest rate has been a big talking point here over the past few months. And so I think producers need to look carefully at what their input costs are going to be for this year, and then look at ways to manage risk, because as Ben said, we think prices will be higher next year than they were this year, but it's never for certain.
How big of an impact is inflation having on the size of the dairy herd, as well as possible rebuilding of the beef herd? Dan?
Well, if you think about the year ahead, inflation has had its impact, there's no doubt, but I still would coin 2024 the year of protein. I say that because we look at whether it's chicken or pork or beef, and I believe dairy protein will be included in that. It's going to be relatively strong. So we've had the years of crops, which were several years ago. We think we're now moving into the years of protein. And so the beef market in particular is supposed to make record highs next year, which again gives it an avenue for our cull cows and some other opportunities in terms of using a dairy animal to at least get a black calf on the ground.
Yeah, so beef on dairy, you mentioned that. How long do you think dairy producers will be able to capitalize on beef on dairy and these extremely high beef prices?
So our problem is, as we model out the beef herd, we see modest expansion today as we keep back some cows, but the beef cow herd has a long ways to go. So if I think about it, this is 3 to 4 years at a minimum. We are still not retaining heifers to a big degree that gives us the opportunity to really accelerate beef production anytime soon. So I've got this draw on the marketplace. The only thing that I'm seeing on the demand side of things is maybe the high-end restaurants are pulling back a little bit in terms of traffic. That's noticeable in the last couple of weeks. But other than that, I see the demand for protein being relatively strong globally and domestically.
Speaking of strong butter prices, I know Katie mentioned it, but butter hitting an all-time high this week. What is driving that?
Well, I think part of it is it's had really good demand. We've got reasonable but on the low side of stocks, but demand has just been great. Domestic demand has been strong for butter. So I think we're getting to that time of year where retailers start getting concerned about, are we going to have enough butter for the holiday season? That's the big demand part of the year. So I think you get that nervousness. You've got good demand already through this year and relatively low inventories. Plus, as we start making more cheese, we're pulling some of that milk that would have otherwise been going into butter powder plants in Class 4 is now not quite available as much as it had been. So that's driven to really high butter prices. That's been a big benefit to Class 4, but it does, as Katie mentioned, widen that spread, and that can potentially add to some volatility and depooling and things like that.
Katie, one thing we haven't talked about is, the potential government shutdown that we saw, that was averted. But as we see some historic things take place on the Capitol, especially in the House with the leadership, kind of seems like maybe that a government shutdown is still looming with that November deadline. What impact would that have on DMC and some of those other payments?
Yes. So we averted it this week, but one thing we're carefully watching, if the government shuts down, it's possible that crop insurance programs could be shut down also. It looks like this go around, they were trying to figure out if there's a way to keep it open, but I think we won't know that until we know what happens in November. And with that, it also means that potentially there's a pause on DMC payments. I was really impressed by USDA this last go around. The prices came out on Friday night. USDA made sure that the DMC payments were going to be in producers' bank accounts, even if there was a shutdown. But if there's a long extended shutdown, we also need to get the Farm Bill extended so DMC can continue next year as well. So there's a lot of work to do on the dairy front.
Yeah. All right. Well, the government didn't shut down. That means we will still have our October 12th grain report as well. So when we come back, we will also, later on the show, we want to talk about grain prices and feed prices and kind of where we're heading with those. We need to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with much more U.S. Farm Report in just a moment.